Hey YouTube seekers, this is Avani from Ecstatic Earth Arts. I'm just waiting for Facebook and Instagram to catch up with us. Hi Instagram seekers, this is Avani from Witching Earth Studio. I am live on 3 different platforms today to chat about protection magic. Ooh, much better. I just got YouTube sort of oriented way nicer. You can see I have a very blank background today because I am in my bedroom and I am trying to keep my children from interrupting today. I was hoping that being in this smaller enclosed space would help. I am going to wait for at least one person to show and then I'll start chatting. Usually I give it like a solid 10 minutes and then people end up leaving before I get to talking about anything. So in the interest of avoiding that, I'm going to get started as soon as somebody shows up. So, hope everyone is having a good day. My day started off kind of rough. It is Beltane, but my family's not going to be celebrating Beltane until tomorrow. I have a gazillion kids in the house, and we have to deal with having them in school. So Fridays are kind of tough. So, hey Artie, nice to see you. I am just waiting to see if I'm not going to get a couple more people on Facebook or YouTube before I get started. Oh, I just realized I have the wrong window up on Facebook, so hang in there with me. It says there's one person on Facebook, but it's not giving me any comments, so it's possible that I'm just seeing myself, watching myself. Alright, let's continue watching. Click to unlock Facebook, so hang in there with me. Oops. Alright. Oh, my husband's watching. Excellent. Alright, I'm going to wait for maybe someone other than my husband who can hear me from the other room. Hopefully you finding a way to celebrate Beltane some way, Artie. What is this? There we go. So I'm doing, for Beltane, we're going to do the ritual that I wrote tomorrow. And then I think actually tomorrow too is I have a small mom group of witchy folk called, hey Liz, glad you can make it. I have a small group of witchy mom friends who had just started meeting for Sabbaths just before all this craziness happened. We're going to try doing a long distance ritual tomorrow late in the morning too. So it's going to be a day full of Beltane activities. Hopefully that's exciting and not stressful for me. I feel like with the quarantine going on that it can really easily go one way or the other at the drop of a hat. All right, well, I'm not going to wait too much longer because I think that, again, people will jump in as we go. So my mother-in-law and my husband are watching at least, so there is that. So first of all, let's first talk about what we're covering today and why I want to talk about it. So the first thing that we're talking about, the only thing we're talking about for today, is psychic protection, specifically as it relates to kind of current state of events with the pandemic and the self-isolating and the weird dystopian nightmare that is going grocery shopping right now. Hey Sarah, glad you can make it. I was just describing, the subject of today's live stream, talking about protection magic, especially as it relates to, the craziness that's happening in the world right now. I really wanted to talk about protection in a relationship to all that stuff because I feel like even more than ever. Hey, River Valley Moonshine, glad you could join us. I feel like right now, protecting ourselves energetically is more important than ever because there's just so much negativity kind of being pelted at us at all directions all the time right now. So I want to give you guys some tools and some techniques and some tricks for how you can protect yourself. That maybe, hey Sarah, other Sarah, we've got 2 Sarahs on Facebook. Some both practical things that you can do and some magical things that you can do. And honestly, in an ideal world, those things have a ton of crossover, because, when you're living the witchy life, hashtag witchy life, um, those things overlap all the time. So first of all, the practical things that you can kind of do to protect yourself right now are kind of obvious. I'm not going to spend too much time on them because I think we've all read the CDC guidelines. Wear a mask. Duh. A lot of people hey Legion, glad you could join us. Some people complain about wearing the masks, but they really help a lot. I keep seeing this really funny meme being passed around on Facebook right now that's talking about, hey Nick Nack Patty, glad you could make it. We're talking about psychic protection in the age of COVID-19. I'm talking a little bit right now about some of the practical things that you can do, and then we're going to talk about the magical things, and there's of course a lot of overlap, so hang in there with me. I know a lot of people already know the CDC guidelines, but they kind of do segue into the magical stuff, so hang in there with me. So practical things. Oh, wearing a mask. So I keep seeing this really funny meme being passed around that's talking about, think about it like if you were out somewhere, and this is obviously assuming that everybody is naked. If someone pees on you, you're going to get wet and they're going to get wet. If you're wearing a pair of pants and the other person isn't and they pee on you, then you're going to get wet, but not quite as much. If you're both wearing pants, neither of you are going to get wet, which is a really silly kind of example, but a good illustration for how masks really do make a difference. And just a really quick note, forever ago, like a lifetime ago, I used to work in the dental field, so I was working around personal protective equipment on a regular basis. When you wear your mask, please wear it over your nose and your mouth. That's an important thing. A lot of people I see in public are doing this thing, not effective. The other thing too, hey Minnie BB, we're just talking about psychic protection in the age of COVID-19. I'm talking a little bit about the physical protective measures and kind of how those are going to segue into the magical things, talking about masks. Making sure you wear them over your nose and your mouth, please, everybody. That'd be great. Also, if you're wearing them down here, obviously they're not going to do anything, so there's no point. Please wear them the right way. If and when you're going to take them off, make sure that you're taking them off. Hey, Katie, glad you could join us. When you take your mask off, make sure you're grabbing it by the elastic or by the ear loop, not by the front part, because that's the part that's theoretically contaminated. Anyway, that's just a really quick practical advice from me to you. Another thing about the face covers. Hey, Janine. That's Fox Den over here. Real other quick tip about the masks. If you're using cloth, or even if you're not using cloth and something that you're reusing, you have to leave that thing out for at least 3 solid days to let it air out, to let any virus that could have gone on it die or attenuate before you can wear it again. So if you're wearing the same cloth or reusable mask day to day to day, it's not going to do what you want to do, and actually it can put you more at risk. Hey, Lessons in Flare Jeans, glad you could make it. So anyway, getting away from masks. The other thing, of course, is social distancing, staying at least 6 feet away from other people. That could be a really big challenge. With the holiday right now with Beltane, it kind of sucks because this is a really big holiday about togetherness and being close and maypole dances, and no one can kind of do that right now, and that sucks. If you're looking for ritual ideas because you haven't made your plans yet, the video I did last week was on ritual ideas for Beltane. You can find that on YouTube. If you're in my Facebook group, of course, you can go back in the feed and find it there too. But the other thing about social distancing is they've actually put out some information that says that if you're out there walking or biking or doing anything that's really active, you need to be even further apart than 6 feet. It should be closer to 15, because of the way that you breathe a lot more forcefully when you're active. So it requires a much larger radius to make sure that everybody is safe. I had to have a discussion about that with my 11-year-old who keeps sneaking down the street to hang out with her little friend. And going biking together. I was like, oh, can you at least walk and not bike? So just be safe and be careful. The other thing, practical things, and I know that this is really hard right now because it's sort of like a train wreck out there, but stop watching the news. Okay, all right, you can't stop watching the news altogether. I know it's like you don't want to stick your head in the sand, But at the same time, if you're watching it all the time or burying yourself in social media just like indefinitely, just like on this continuum throughout your day, you're just constantly exposing yourself to this barrage of crap. And nobody wants that. So here's my tip from me to you. Limit yourself in how much time that you're spending. Hey, Sam, glad you could join us. Limit yourself in how much time that you're spending in watching the news or being on social media. Give yourself a window of time every day. Hey, Brian, glad you can make it. We're talking about practical ways that you can psychically protect yourself during the pandemic, with all the negativity that's kind of flying around out there. Talking about limiting our time watching the news and on social media, but not Fridays at 4 o'clock because that's when you should be here watching my lives. I would say, if you're trying to figure out what time is going to be best for me, you should probably aim for something that is not first thing in the morning, because if you do it first thing in the morning, you're going to spend your whole day being in a shitty mood. And if you're doing it right before bed, then you're going to go to bed or not be able to go to sleep because you're fixating on all the crappy stuff that you write about. Hey, Cosmo Yuri, glad you could make it. So something that's kind of in the middle of the day is probably going to be the safest. If you're one of those people that kind of likes to lay in bed watching, looking at YouTube or looking at, social media, I highly recommend putting it not in your bedroom, putting it somewhere away where it can't distract you or keep you awake. Hey, Nero MG, glad you can make it. Talking about practical things you can do to psychically protect yourself from, all the negativity that's out there. We talked a little bit about masks and social distancing, and we are now talking about limiting watching the news and consuming social media, and kind of giving yourself a time frame every day that you commit to doing those things, and then being really, really good about putting those things down for a little while so that you're not just constantly mired in the muck. Anything else? No, we're good. So now let's talk about the magical things. Yay, that's what people really want to be here for. It's funny because I think that I was a little afraid talking about the practical things because I think that a lot of people think that's lame. But what good is magic? Magic isn't a cure-all. It's not going to fix everything. It's not going to, magically make things go away. You still need to be taking those physical steps day to day. Hey, Pip Harry Witch, glad you can make it. You need to be taking those physical steps day to day to protect yourself and take care of yourself. And those things are going to translate magically too. But let's talk a little bit more about the magic stuff because I know that's what people really want to be here for. The first thing, obviously, is shielding. If you're not familiar with the concept of shielding, shielding is a way in which you basically reinforce your personal energy shield, your personal energy field, to both keep in the good things, the things that are productive to you. Beltane blessings to you, Hair Witch Pip. Glad you could make it. I know that it's a holiday, so anybody that's here today, I'm very grateful for. So shields are for both keeping the good things in, the positivity in, the productive things that are productive for your personal spiritual path in, and keeping all the things that are not productive or harmful out. I hesitate to use the term harmful because I think it bears mentioning that there are some things that we might perceive to be harmful, but then once we actually experience them and live them, we actually find that they've really helped us grow, even though in the moment they don't seem so great. So I'm not going to get into too much detail with that because I have a little bit more to cover still. But generally, the way that you shield is with visualization or with meditation. There's different visualizations that you can use. The most common one that people use is the idea of visualizing white light around them. I actually am sort of here proposing a little bit of a twist on that. Not just white light, but sort of visualizing the idea of golden, like blindingly bright. Hi, Marisa Bell. Visualizing blindingly bright golden sunlight instead of white light. Because it does two things. First of all, magically speaking, sunlight is known or associated with a lot of really strong healing and protective energy, just in and of itself. Bonus points is that there's a lot of research that shows that UV rays or sunlight actually can kill the virus within the span of a few minutes. Now, obviously, your visualized sunlight might not kill the virus any faster, but it certainly can't hurt. Um, and the idea, and the other thing too, is just the act of intentionally visualizing something is, yes, magic in and of itself, but it's also training your consciousness to pay attention to your energy and the way that you're interacting with the world around you, which is its own magic. So it's kind of cool the way that works. Um, so the thing, so I was talking about masks earlier. I want to kind of tie that into what we're talking about here with shielding. Um, so let me give you kind of a funny example. So a long, long time ago, when I was first learning about alpha state and meditation and going through Lori Cabot's work, I started learning about programming myself as far as like learning to remember to do things at different times a day. And I managed to train myself because I don't know about you, but I am personally terrible. I remember to like take medication every day. Like I'm still not great, but I'm better than I used to. And the way that I did that is I trained myself to remember to do that when I am eating breakfast. So if I'm pouring a bowl of cereal, I'll just be like, oh, I need to take my medicine today. So in that way, I started creating an association in my mind between the act of having breakfast and the act of having to take my medication. So you can kind of use your mask in the same way. So using your mask as sort of a mental trigger for yourself to remember to do that shielding, or even better, use it as a talisman. The idea being that when you put on your mask, it becomes a charm or a talisman that literally helps create the force field or the shield that forms around you. Almost like, when you're watching sci-fi, Star Trek or Star Wars, and they go, shields up. That's what happens when you're putting that mask on. Be like, shields are up as I put my mask on and I am good to go. And the more you do that and the more that you work on that visualization, the faster it will be, the less work it is in the moment. You'll just put it on and you'll be there. And that's really the whole idea. So if you can kind of get into the habit of using your mask as a trigger for yourself to remember to shield, it can be really, really helpful. And of course, the idea of shielding, of using white light or golden light, or even fire, or another thing you could use is spikes. The idea of visualizing yourself being like in a spiky ball, or even the spikes could even be made of energy if you like. That can be really useful, I think, if you're in a store or a place where you're finding that people are not respecting the social distancing thing and you really wish they would. Um, so like I said, you don't need a mask, obviously, to shield. Lots of people do shielding even when we don't have a crazy pandemic going on. It's just a matter of sitting down and meditating and doing the same visualization of something, that shield of white light or fire or spikes or mirrors or whatever kind of resonates with you. You can use that as a way to protect yourself anytime and anywhere that you are. The other thing that you can use, again, this having to do with the masks, is you can you trace sigils or charms as symbolic charms or runes on the inside of your mask, on your protective equipment, to not only protect you physically but also to protect you energetically. If you are using fabric masks, like the reusable masks, you actually literally could paint them on the inside or the outside if you don't care that other people see them. But I like the idea of them being on the outside, unseen to the rest of the world. I think that adds to the magic of protection in a way, like you're protecting it from being seen from the rest of the world. So if you have fabric, like I said, you can do that. You can use fabric paint or probably even regular acrylic paint if you really wanted to. Just, make sure it's really dry before you put it on your face, or isn't fumy. You might want to leave it outside for a few days and make sure it off gases any funny smells before you go putting it right up against your face. If you're crafty and you're sewing the masks yourself, those are multiple layers. You could always put the paint on one of the inside layers, so that way it's not right up against your skin too, if you find you're sensitive to that sort of thing. But just as a note, if you are not using fabric, you should not do that thing. If you're using like the surgical masks that are made, that are disposable and made for one-time use, even though a lot of people are reusing them right now, putting oils or moisture of any kind actually decreases the efficacy of them for the most part. So you definitely don't want to be putting anything on there on purpose. Hey TT, glad you can make it. So don't actually do paint or add anything if you're using a surgical disposable mask. You can just do it visually, visualize it with your mind or trace it with your finger, energetically. You don't want to actually put it on the mask. That would be a bad idea. Some kind of suggestions for some symbols that are great to use. I really like using runes. I suggest Elhaz, which sort of resembles a Y, but it has, so it's a line and then the lines on the side. So it's sort of like, like this, Elhaz, Elhaz, Elhaz. So it sort of looks like a person doing this. And that's what I've always associated with. It also reminds me of the priestess position. So the idea of someone who's protecting you. Another one that's really good, and again, going back to the idea of the sun and the sunlight and the power of healing of sunlight. Another rune that I would suggest is Sowilla, which actually looks like a very angular S. I have a tendency to actually make a binder rune of the two, which looks like, so you have, I'm going to trace it in there, but it looks like Elhaz. And then I add, so I use this arm from Elhaz, becomes the beginning of the S, and then the other two lines, so it ends at the bottom. So it just looks like an extra little triangle off the side. That's the binder rune that I like to use a lot for healing. When my 11-year-old broke their arm, and then when my husband broke his arm, I actually wrote that on their casts to help them heal, which as far as I can tell, it certainly didn't hurt. So that's an idea. And of course, if you're really into sigils, you can make your own. There's different ways to make sigils, either ones that are imagery or ones that are based on letters. That's a little bit beyond the scope of what I want to talk about today, but Google it. There's a ton of information out there. Some other ideas for protection. So before I go any further, I want to mention that any of the things that I mentioned from here on out, my intention is that these are only objects and items that you'll be able to find at home. Obviously, we're all kind of stuck inside for the most part right now. We're not just going out to the store to buy, whatever for the sake of, funsies. We're trying really hard to not go out. So I really try to keep my suggestions limited to things that most people have around the house already, because I want it to be accessible. So another thing that you can do is to make a charm pouch. Now I say pouch, but what I recognize that not everybody has those convenient little drawstring pouches lying around. Another option is that you can actually make yourself a little origami envelope, and I have a link for a video that I will post in the comments of this on Facebook and in the YouTube description. Of course, you can search for it yourself if you don't have access to that immediately and you desperately want to find it, yesterday. So taking an envelope, and the idea is that you create it and you can put herbs inside of it and you can carry them around with you. Now, going back to masks, if you are really creative and you make the masks again, you could actually tuck something like that inside the mask. Just a thought. I don't know about you guys, but I'm actually not that crafty. I'm just saying, if you are, it's a thought. So some herbs that are really great to use, and again, these are things that I try to pick out things that most people already have in their cabinets for cooking. If you're, not the type of person that just has a cabinet full of herbs for your witchcrafting needs. Bay is one that's really good, and bay is nice because they're big, broad, flat leaves, so they'll fit in an envelope and be relatively low profile, especially. And just a real quick, there are some herbs that are good for protection that I did not add on this list because they're powdered when you get them as spices. And I didn't want people having to worry about them getting like ginger root powder in their pocket lining. So these are things that are large enough that they shouldn't leak too much. So bay, basil, black pepper. If you have the cracked pepper that's a little bit thicker, that would work. Caraway, cardamom, coriander, cumin, dill, flax. If you have the onion that's dehydrated, not the powder, that could work. Pine needles, which is really great because you can actually go out and harvest those yourself. I don't know about you guys, but I am surrounded by pine trees. I have to literally step outside my front door and I could probably bend down and find some pine needles. Tobacco, or another really fun option is actually violets, and you can, those are cool because literally those are in season right now. You can go and get them fresh and pick them right out of the ground. So other things, where am I at? Some other things too, if you're really into the idea of magical oils, you can use them to anoint yourself, or again, anoint your, hey Wickedly Witchy, you can use essential oils to anoint your masks, or again, your reusable fabric PPE, not anything that's disposable, because again, I think that's liquid will decrease the efficacy of any disposable products. You can use some essential oils to trace those sigils or those symbols or whatever you're trying to use. Or if you don't want to put it on a mask, if you've got paper, you can always do it on your third eye, or the back of your neck. Some essential oils are supposed to be really good for one, protection, but also I put a bunch on here that are also antiviral, because right now, at least in the context of this conversation, I feel like it works both ways. Eucalyptus, rosemary, and cinnamon have actually been shown to be antiviral in some research studies. Some other ones that you hear a lot are citruses like orange and lemon, or clove. So those are some thoughts. So like I said, so you can put the pouches or the envelopes of herbs either in a mask if you have them, or you put them in your pocket or in your wallet or in your bag or even in your car, wherever you feel like it would best be served. So the final thing I want to talk about is I have actually a special recipe I want to share with you that I kind of came up with for today's live feed. And it is an antiviral Florida water recipe. So let's first start with, what is Florida water? Florida water is a distilled water / alcohol, like an herbally infused distilled alcohol water product that is used, or it's sold as a perfume, but it's used in a lot of Central and South American folk traditions as a tool for cleansing and purification, much in the way that people in the modern New Age movement use white sage for smoke cleansing or smudging, which I hesitate to use that word because, appropriation, but a lot of people know it better by that phrasing. So Florida water is especially great in situations where you can't be burning things or smoldering herbs, like if you're in a car driving, or that said, I know people that burn incense in their car, but fewer and fewer cars are made with ashtrays now, so that's not super possible anymore. If you're doing something in your car, if you are looking for something that you can use in your apartment or your dorm room or whatever space you're in where maybe you can't literally be just lighting up fires or incense whenever you feel like it, or if you live with your parents or with family that aren't super, witch friendly, this is another option, is making Florida water. It's really helpful because it's in a liquid and it's easily contained and there's no smoke involved, so it just smells pretty for the most part, as far as they're concerned. So here is the recipe for how you make this particular type of Florida water, this antiviral. It's sort of a twist on a recipe that I found online that contains a little bit more ingredients that are considered to be antiviral. Now, really quick before I keep going and start talking about this recipe, I want to give you the disclaimer that I am not a doctor. I am not licensed to diagnose. I am not in any way pretending to give you medical advice. My intention for this, I'm calling it antiviral, but I want to say that my intention is that you're really using this magically, psychically, energetically. If there are any antiviral benefits, that's a bonus. But we're focusing more on the magical here. I am not liable for any ideas that you guys might get about how this is going to cure anything or prevent you from getting sick if you do. No promises on any of that. But for magic, energetic, psychic purposes, it can be really awesome and it smells nice. So, moving on, here's how you do that thing. So first of all, and I recognize that this can be really difficult to find right now. Actually, before I even get any further than this, I want to say that, I keep mentioning all these ingredients and things, that I assume that everyone has on hand. Not everybody has the same things in their home. This isn't about having the exact right ingredients. I don't think that's what witchcraft is ever really about. I mean, maybe sometimes, but not mostly. I feel like you need to use what you have. And, witchcraft and magic is all about intention. So if you don't have, like two of the ingredients, but you have everything else, or you have something, but it's like not the exact version that I'm talking about, use it. Or don't use it, as the case may be, because your intention is going to be stronger than any omissions or changes that you might need to make. Hey, Lady Ferguson, we were just chatting about a Florida water recipe that I'm giving everyone to help with psychic protection. So here is how you make it, finally. So first of all, you want to take some high volume alcohol. You could use vodka. You want to use something that's like, as close to 100 proof as you can get. Vodka or Everclear or whatever you have available. I recognize that right now that stuff is actually really difficult to find because reasons. If you do not have access to that, you can absolutely use regular water. It's not going to have the same physical antiviral effect as far as like killing germs or what have you, but it will still certainly have magical effects. So if you don't have access to that, don't let that be an obstacle. So you want to take 5 cups and you want to put it into a pot on the stove, and you're going to add any dried ingredients that are in the recipe. Obviously, most of those are herbs. Things, again, like I mentioned a bunch of those herbs earlier, and I'll mention them again for the folks that joined us since then. The ones I have in this recipe in particular are bay, orange peel, cloves, ginger root, rose petals, or rose buds, rosemary, or violets. Now, again, some of those are dry, some of those are fresh. But at this step, first thing in the recipe, you're going to add all of the dried herbs. Oh, and orange peel. I didn't say that. Orange peel. Cinnamon sticks. Orange peel and cinnamon sticks. Those are on here, and somehow my eyes skip right over them. And if you end up having to use water instead of vodka, the idea is that when you want to use holy or blessed water, so, call on whatever deity you particularly follow, adhere to, worship, honor, devote to, whatever, and ask them to bless it and start throwing things together. And once you have all of your dried ingredients in your alcohol or water, depending on what you're using, you're going to cook it on low for about 10 minutes. And then after 10 minutes, you're going to add all of your fresh ingredients. And I really like the idea, again, of using the violets at least as a fresh ingredient, again, because they're so easy to find. You could use dandelions if they're out there, if that's what you feel like to use, but some sort of flower, fresh flower, I think is really nice to include, especially if you know it to smell nice. So after you have your fresh ingredients, you're going to cook it on low to medium low for another half hour to 45 minutes. Basically, you want to cook it until the smell of the herbs starts to overpower the smell of the alcohol, assuming you're using alcohols. And then once it's done, you're going to strain out all of the herbs, ideally, or not, if you're one of those people that really likes having them in there. But if you're planning on using this on the fly, having chunks of herb in there might not be convenient for you. So once it's done, you're going to strain out the herbs. Whatever if you don't have like a legit strainer at home that you like, you can use pantyhose. You could use an old t-shirt that you don't care about getting stained. Again, use what you have. And then once you have all the herbs in there, you just squeeze it really, really good to make sure you get every last drop. And then at the very, very end, I've included it in here. At the very, very end, if you have them, you can throw, hi, RSAM Julia, I don't think I said hi to you yet. Glad you can make it. At the very end, you can add in some essential oils if you have them. I know not everybody keeps those handy. Some essential oils, again, eucalyptus, rosemary, orange, clove, lemon, cinnamon. I'll note about cinnamon essential oil, if you're going to use it, it is very, very strong. You should never use it directly on your skin if it's not diluted. It can burn you. Be careful and use with caution. And then once you have it, you can put it in a bottle. It could be a pretty bottle or it could be an ugly bottle. It doesn't really matter as long as it's, with you when you need it. So I think it's a really great recipe to have on hand if you are in your car, and if to have to wash your hands with after you get out of the grocery store. The other places where you might want to use it, again, because we're using it not just for physical protection, but also for magical protection. Florida water, when people are using it in those folk traditions, the most common places that they will use Florida water is on their third eye, on the back of their heads, sometimes on their pressure points, but also on the soles of their feet. Obviously, that's only really useful if you're wearing sandals and it's really nice weather, which sadly we're not quite there yet. Depending on where you are, I suppose. Here where I am, not so much. It's a very cold, yucky, rainy day today. So the idea is, you just kind of dab it on, rub it, and, the idea is that you are energetically cleansed. And of course, you don't have to limit it to those places. If you're like, well, I brushed my elbow up against something in the store, you could use it on your elbow. Or if you don't want to put it in your car, you could leave it in your house. You could leave it in your garage. You could put it in a little bottle and keep it in your purse and carry it with you everywhere. But it's a really great way to take some magic, physical, protective potion with you anywhere and everywhere that you go. And just so you guys know, if you didn't catch all of that recipe, or you're like, holy crap, I couldn't write that fast, don't worry. Literally in about 25 minutes, I have a blog that's going to be going active on my new website that will have the recipe written out. If you are on Facebook or YouTube, I will include that link either pinned in the comments or in the description box, so you'll be able to find it there. So hey Jessica, you actually just missed most of the thing. I just finished chatting. But if you want to go back and watch the replay from the beginning, of course, you're welcome to do that. So does anybody have any questions before I sign off about shielding or psychic protection or any of the things that we talked about today? Let's chat. I actually just came up with this recipe yesterday when I was preparing for today, and I actually really want to make it for myself. I just super haven't gotten around to it yet. I thought to myself, ooh, maybe I should make it and have it on hand for the video so I can actually show it to people, because, then I'll look organized, like I know what I'm doing, but, here we are. I'll get there. You're very welcome, Pip. Please come back. I do my live feeds Friday at 4 p.m. every week. At least that's the intention. And if you like what you saw here today, please feel free to sign up for my email list that you can find linked in my bio for notification of, the subjects I'll be talking about every week, and tips and tricks and, sneak peeks about stuff, special offers, plus a 20% off coupon to my shop. So check it out. Same thing for you guys on Facebook and YouTube. Link in the comments, and if you're on Facebook, it's also pinned to the top of the Facebook group. Hey, Patty on YouTube, glad you could make it. Patty says lives in NYC and hopes that the NYC quarantine, what have you, will end soon. I think we are all hoping for that. I'm actually in Connecticut, and I'm a little nervous because as it stands right now, the governor is saying May 20th, which is like, less than 3 weeks away, and I'm really panicked because I actually do own a brick and mortar small business, and I'm terrified about reopening right now. And it's been really fun getting to do all this fun online witchy stuff. So I know that the state of Maine is actually closed until the end of August, and I know that thing because I hope you stay safe and healthy too, Patty. But my in-laws own a cottage up in Maine, and we won't be able to go there at all this year, which totally sucks. All right. Well, it looks like nobody has any questions anywhere, so I want to thank you guys all for joining me. I hope if anybody is watching this secondhand, go ahead and do me a hashtag replay. I forgot to do the hashtag live for when people first got here. That's all right. No big deal. But feel free to go back and rewatch, share with your friends. And next week, I'm going to be talking about altars and altar building. And I'm hoping the weather is nice so I can actually go outside and show you some of my altars that are out in my yard. Although that will require me first going out and neatening them up because I haven't quite made it out there yet because the weather hasn't really been cooperating. So we'll see what happens. I have plenty of inside altars to show you if that doesn't work out. So anyway, everybody, I hope you guys have a wonderful Beltane and have a great weekend. And you all stay safe and healthy. So you all take care. Oh, you know what? I just realized that Sarah says here she's at the starting stages of her journey, and she's hoping she can take some of these ideas during the pandemic. She's wondering if there are any incantations or protective words she can use alongside. All right, so obviously words are super important. The exact words that you use, not as important as the intention behind them. If there are words that you say that feel right to you, use them. Within the realm of magic, obviously numbers matter a lot. So a lot of people will repeat things 3 times or 7 times or 13 times if you want to be super duper, cautious and thorough. So the exact words you use, I don't think they matter. I think what matters most is that they come from the heart and that they feel powerful to you. And if that involves invoking a deity that you particularly work with, then do that. If it's summoning, or not, let's say summoning, that's not the right word. If it's calling on elemental beings, use that. If it's calling on fairies, which I don't think would be particularly productive, you could do that. Or ancestors, I think that feels really powerful to me right now, but that's just me. So you're gonna have to find out what works best for you. I'm not, I feel like it's the popular media where you see all these magical wizards and witches and what have you, when they are doing spells or incantations, they're speaking in Latin. But I don't think that that's necessary by any stretch. And, I don't think it's even realistic that any people in the past even were consistently using Latin. I think that they were all speaking in their common or their regular tongue, and it sort of over time became sort of romanticized to speak incantations or spells or rituals in a different language. But I definitely don't think that that's necessary, because I like to think that there's going to be someday, a long time in the future from now, where people are going to look back and think that there's something mystical and magical about speaking spells in English, So to go back to your original question, no, I don't think there's any special words you need to use. But if there's something you want to write, by all means, you absolutely could. So, all right, I'm gonna give it another second to make sure Sarah doesn't have any follow-up questions, and then I'll probably sign up. This morning was rough, you guys. Today, I just felt really off. Most of the time, I'm in a pretty good mood. And today, I was just feeling out of place. There's this, I always think about this concept of being beside oneself. I have this book about intuitive healing where they actually have this diagram of the idea of you just sort of being slightly displaced to the side of, your energy body being slightly displaced to the side of your physical body. And that's sort of that feeling of just sort of being out of sync with everything. And thankfully, I finally got into doing some artwork and some drawing, and then I started to feel better. But I had to take a break to do this for you guys today. So maybe I'll get back to it today. Maybe I won't. Sometimes once dinner time rolls around, all bets are off, because it's eat, kids get to bed, and then it's our time to kind of decompress for the day. And artwork and work doesn't happen. We'll see. Tomorrow it's supposed to be a beautiful day. I'm really hoping it dries out so we can do our little belting ritual outside. Oh, Sarah's written back. She says that's great. She will use intention statements from the heart then. Excellent. All right. That said, I'm going to sign off. If anybody is watching this on the replay and you have questions, please feel free to post comments. I'm more than happy to respond with written comments as best as I can. So everybody take care, and I hope that you have a blessed beltane. Blessed be, seekers.